Good evening, and welcome to the July 18, 2017 meeting of the Norfolk Board of Health. The meeting will come to order at 7 o'clock. We have a fairly stacked agenda early on, certainly, starting with a request for local approval to allow the use of sieve analysis in lieu of percolation tests regarding upgrade on 6 Noon Hill Avenue. So, would the applicant come forward and identify yourself,
Hi,
please?
my name is Bob Vay with Norfolk Engineering, representing the Garzas at 6 Noon Hill.
All right, well, you know what? Since this is a variance, we have to give a little speech here. It's called a preamble.
Okay.
So just 1 second while I read that thing. A variance hearing from Board Health Regulations is called to order for 6 Noon Hill Ave. It's my duty to inform you that you'll have to provide the board with data to support your request for a waiver of our requirements, and that if you do not receive the waiver, it'll do you manifest injustice. You've also got to show that what you intend to do is environmentally acceptable. Floor is
Okay.
yours.
So I'm Bob Vay with Norfolk Engineering, representing the Garzas at 6 Noon Hill Ave. It's an existing 4-bedroom house with a failed septic system. I have designed a system which includes a 1,500-gallon tank, 1,000-gallon pump chamber, and leaching field consisting of 3 45-foot Elgin trenches. I am asking for an upgrade approval for a sieve test in lieu of a percolation test, because when we dug the shelves out there during the soil testing, there was water infiltrating into the perk test, and we wouldn't have got an accurate reading. I think it's pretty clear, and I've designed it. I think the system will work fine. We just need that approval.
All set? Understood. Wade, our engineer, do you have any comments?
No, it's pretty straightforward. Wasn't able to do a percolation test. System was in failure at the time. There's effluent above ground. Really like to get this thing going. There's an Elgin system there. It's one of those IA systems. I'm not sure it's ever been before the board like this. It's kind of interesting whereby by the approval from the state, they allow the system to be 2 feet to groundwater without any local variances or even state variances. It's just something that they allow because it has passive treatment, the system itself. There's some kind of treatment going on. Also, an approval letter for this particular one, just to talk about it. If you don't have 4 feet of permanent material, you can also design it only using 2 feet of permanent material without going from the state or the board for a variance request. And that's kind of like the new way that the state's working with the IA systems, giving a lot more leadway and a lot more trust in these systems to purify the effluent before it goes into the groundwater.
And your advice to the board is the state is operating on firm territory here, making good decisions?
I'm assuming so, yes. Well, they're offering more tools in a toolbox. And I'm not there at the testing site. I do know they have a testing site down on the Cape where they do test these, and that's done by county employees. And I don't think these guys are really. I think they're pretty straight shooters. George Helfelder runs that program, and they actually do testing. Not sure if this went in front of it, but this is one of the many things that are out there now.
So the general use allowance?
Yes, general use, yes.
Questions?
No, pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
For Wade?
Oh, and also the private wells are distance. The distance from the private wells are 100 feet. An Elgin cannot be less than 100 feet to a private well without,
Right.
without
All right.
approval.
Well, we've read your letter and you've repeated the essence of it.
Pretty simple.
Is there a motion to act upon this variance request?
Motion to allow the use of a sieve analysis in lieu of percolation test for 6 Noon Hill Ave as requested.
Is there a second?
Second motion.
Further
Second motion.
discussion? Is there anybody in the audience, a neighbor, would like to say something about this, pro or con? No. All right. In that case, we have a motion that's been approved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Great, thank you.
Okay. Let's see, next. Well, it's a tad early. We do have a 7:15 appointment on our list.
It's not a public hearing, though, so.
So
Correct.
is the 7:15 appointee, Tim Martin, here? Mr. Martin, would you like to come forward? Mr. Glossa would like to come forward instead.
Let me just get set up, and I have some copies of these plans that you guys can look at. And sort of here, it's not asked, it's on an informal basis, seeking some advice on how we can get a system So I have 3 copies of the plan if you want to look at them. And I have a plan mounted here. Is this?
Oh, sorry.
Me. So, Mr. Chairman, first of all, my name is John Glossa, Glossa Engineering, 46 East Street in East Walpole. So I'm a licensed engineer. These plans aren't stamped, but they will be stamped, or actually, we filed these plans, or at least something that looked like these plans. We did make some minor amendments to these based on some.
John, folk, is anybody interested in looking at this who's in the audience? Because I know you can't see it.
Well,
And some folks already know what it looks like, so. All right, fine.
so anyway, yeah, maybe I should. So I'm here with Tim Martin, who is the applicant here, and his attorney, Stephen Clapp, who is sort of, helping us with this. It's these lots. Tim is an applicant where there's a trust that owns, or different trusts that own 3 lots on Pennacook Street, right? So Pennacook up off of Fruit Street and that neighborhood down there with all the Indian names. And these lots, obviously are vacant lots. There's no houses on these lots now. Each lot, I believe, is approximately 30,000 square feet or so. And it's a sort of a difficult, it's a difficult area. I'm just going to get something to read from.
So this is the west side of Pennacook, the low side, right?
So it's a bit of a difficult area. Behind, or at the rear of these lots, there is wetlands. Whether that's wetlands under the state wetland regulations or not has not been confirmed, but I don't believe your regulations really require it to be under the state. We think this is an isolated wetland that actually wouldn't be recognized under the state regulation as a wetland. But under Norfolk's regulations, we're showing it on the lot as wetlands. And we're providing, adequate separation between those wetlands and this proposed septic system. But as you know, whenever you see wetlands, and if you look at the topography here, it's pretty flat in this area. Whenever you have wetlands, we're going to have a high groundwater table, because if we didn't have a high groundwater table, we wouldn't have wetlands. We've did a number of soil tests here, and basically what we found is that, you have your typical topsoil, A layer, B layer, and then a C1 layer, which is kind of a compacted sandy loam. In a few places we tried to perk that, and it will not perk. But below that, at about 6 or 7 or 8 feet, is a C2 layer, which in most instances we categorize that as a loamy sands. And we actually, without Wade's supervision, I took samples and sent them to Filch Engineering in Cranston, and they came back as loamy sand. But it's a trick to get a perk test done there, or it's difficult. So last year, because of the drought, we were able to go out there at basically the end of August and the beginning of September, and we attempted perk tests. We were successful here, and I think the perk tests are running around 30 or 35 minutes an inch. So we have 2 perk tests that are sort of at the rear of the leach lines, the ones at the rear of the property here. Both of them pass, so, our feeling is we meet Title V, we meet your regulations. But if I could just speak for Wade for a second, his feeling is that because of the size of the system, that we really should be doing some perk tests closer to the street to confirm the consistency of the soil, because we've had a number of perk tests out there that we abandoned after, and basically we abandoned them because they don't drop 60 minutes in an hour increment, so it's like, why bother? But I sort of thought about this today. I laid out a little something in writing, so I'm just might have to refresh my memory. But we were trying to sort of get this done quickly because we knew we had a small window, so we were doing maybe 5 or 6 of these, maybe more in a day. And I was, hired laborers to actually dig the perk holes and kind of get this, so that we could try to get this, done and over with, thinking that there's 3 lots here, that we may have as many as 3 houses and 3 septic systems. But one thing that was happening was that, I have laborers who aren't really sort of schooled in percolation testing and soils and that sort of stuff. So on more than one occasion, I look over, and after the hole was excavated to dig the perk hole in, and the perk hole was done. Now, these guys are down 7 and 8 feet below the ground, maybe even more in some cases. And I look over, and the perk hole is filling with water. So we had a very small, vertically sort of window to get our perk tests done. So admittedly, there was a number of them, and more failed than passed. But my rationale is that some of them that failed most likely were being influenced by the high groundwater table, and the tests were started and going before we sort of had a chance to see what was happening in that perk hole before we started it. Other ones, I think, just weren't dug deep enough, and they were still too much a little bit into the C1 layer, because it's not like a plane. It's not like that. It's an interface where the C1 and the C2 are always 100% recognizable. So, our opinion here is that, this is a system that, in all respects, meets your regulations in Title V. Wade has a different opinion. So we're just here to see if there's something we can do, some way that this can be worked out. We don't think we're going to be able to do perk tests on this site this year based on the amount of rain we've had so far this year. The water table is just a few feet below the ground at this location now, if you go out there, where last year it was, at this time, it was 4 and 5 feet below the ground. So we're pretty sure it's not going to drop low enough. It might, and we might be able to go back, but we're kind of figuring we can't. So some of the things that we might suggest to you would be that, if it's palatable to you, would be to approve this with the 2 perk tests, and then we can give you some sieve analysis for the soils, the C2 layer, closer to Pennacook Street. Other things are that, your regulations require us to design for garbage disposal, which means that the system is actually 50% bigger than Title V requires, which means that more or some of the system is being pushed away from where the perk tests are by your regulations. Other things are, this is designed for 4-bedroom house. If it's palatable to the board to go forward with this, we'd be willing to design for a 3-bedroom house. We'd be willing to design for a 3-bedroom house with no garbage disposal. So as the leach bed gets smaller and smaller, or leave it this size and call it a 3-bedroom house without a garbage disposal. Other things would be to have a passive, like you just approved, a passive leach bed like a Presby or an Elgin, which would have a smaller footprint and put more of the system over the perk test holes that we were able to successfully do in the field, and then finally do an active, even though we would not really want to do that, but do an active alternative system like a fast system, where the leach bed is smaller and therefore more of it over the successful perk tests. I don't believe in here that there's actually any perk tests that failed. And the reason for that is, when we went out there, if you look on this plan across the street, there's wells. So we were under the impression, we didn't ask, that those were active drinking water wells. So we were staying 100 feet away. So we're not here asking you to approve anything. We're looking for a little guidance on what the board might be willing to approve, so that we can move forward with this project.
Mhm.
So I think with that, Mr. Chairman, I can answer any questions that you might have.
Well, let's begin once again with Wade. I presume, based upon what John just said, you have expressed to him some doubts.
Well, what I've expressed to Mr. Glasser was actually in writing is plan reviews. That's what I do. And here was at least the first revision, my first design that came in for the property, and I communicate with the engineers through emails after I review a set of plans. And Mr. Glasser is the 3rd engineer I've been working with on this 3 lots since my tenure in the town of Norfolk. The second engineering company out there, we discovered that there's actually 2 layers of soils. There's a C1 and a C2, where in the past, the engineers were always perking at the top level. The second engineering company, we were lucky enough, it was dry enough that we could see the difference a little bit. And we explored it, and actually the lower soils were actually working, it was perking. So that was like a positive for these pieces of land. The problem is that there's really high groundwater there, so you have to catch it at the right time. You got to catch it when the groundwater is low, so you can actually perk the soils, which is required by the state. So that was basically the kind of strategy to get anything workable on these lots. So the second engineering company and the owner was coming always late. You're going in October, and I was telling them you got to go at least go in August and September, and they just weren't making the dates. And every time I went out there, it was wet. They even put monitoring wells out there to monitor the water. It was wet by the time we got out there because they were scheduling in October, and that's when groundwater starts to rise. So Mr. Glasser was also hired too, and when he was hired, it came into that drought. Summer of the drought, so the water table was low. And we went out there quite a few times in August and September of 2016, attempting perk tests and observation holes. And I think we went as far as Q, going to the alphabet. I mean, I wasn't out there just for a couple of them. There were almost like 24 holes and stuff. And And this is the third company I'm out there with. So I've been out there extensively on that piece of property and popping holes all over the place. And it's almost, you're chasing soils. You got to find an area that could support a Title V system and also a town of Norfolk system, because that's what the town requires. So you have the garbage ground. So it's a big area. So if you start perking in an area, you get a failed system, a failed perk, that soils around there are no longer acceptable for on-site septic systems. You have to move to another location. And as they were continually working that land, they were getting failures. So sections of those lots became undesirable. And also they had wetland setbacks in the back of the lot. And across the street, when I was out there in August in 2016, September, those two wells were considered active wells, so it acted as a setback. So that area wasn't explored at all. And I do have, this is the plan I was working as my working plan as an agent, and I had my field books and also as locating areas where the test holes were. So when the plans come in, I'm able to see where the system is sitting, laying, and then where I saw soils and stuff. So I was reviewing it. And so if you look at this plan, I know everybody can't see it, but this was the reality back in 2016. We had 3 lots, we had wetlands in the back, but we also had 2 wells in the front, which you see the 100-foot setback, and you can see where some of the perks are along those 2 setbacks where the wells are. And you can see a perk, I think what's 26, and the other one was like, what, 37, something like that. So those are 2 successful perks next to each other, which was, I guess, pretty exciting at the time. And then there's one in the middle which didn't work out because water intrusion came in and the perk had to be stopped. In my letter to John, recognizing that perk hole, the intrusion of the perk stopped the perk, so it didn't support the soil consistency, and also didn't show soil consistency, nor did it not show soil consistency. It was weighed out, and the perk wasn't successful, it wasn't completed. So because you had water intrusion, you just can't call that hole acceptable. It has to show a perk. And if you look around some of those percolation rates, you'll see failed systems, failed holes very close to it. Failed, that worked, that was incomplete. That failed, failed. We tried over here, failed. We got a 53, which would work, but we had surrounding fail perks. So your system is large enough, you know that's not a good area because it's not consistent soils to support an on-site septic system. Over here, we abandoned at 71 minutes per inch. Wasn't worth standing there. 67 minutes per inch. Failed, a 41 and a failed. So here you got a 41, looks pretty good, but then you're surrounded with fails, and the fails are close enough where your system, where it's laid out flat, would be laying over the failed perk holes. So that's not acceptable by Title V standards, because you need consistent soils throughout the leaching facility. The state requires a minimum of 2 holes and 2 perks for primary and reserve. If you design with trenches with a reserve in between, you can go a minimum of 2 holes and 2 perks. And that's based on a decision of the soil evaluator and the agent observing for the town. And in looking at this, there just wasn't enough perks to support on-site septic systems. And the first review I saw, 2 perks weren't on the plan. The fail perk here and perk S wasn't on the plan itself. And the leaching facility was spread over these 2 perks, but it excluded the 2 fail perks. And you can see in my writings, I picked that up because of my own notes, my field notes saying, well, you excluded 2 perks, and so this won't work. So they came back with another revision, and again, this is an email, so I keep my comments consistent. So this is running off the other email. And the second time around, it's still, looking at the plan review, I said the soils again weren't consistent enough to support a Title V septic system. From the second time I wrote the letter or the email to Mr. Glossa, which would be March 15th, then I started looking into the wells, because I know they had a problem. I know what they want to do. They want to develop. So looking at the setbacks here, I did a little research and went to the water department and found out that these 2 wells were actually like an irrigation well, because the homes are tied into town water. And where I have the water department's, billing for those two properties, which is pretty good proof that these wells are no longer portable wells, they're private wells. I mean, they're irrigation wells. So now this land is now opened up. This land that we, in 2016, we thought was the no zone, now it opened up. So it kind of gives more of another chance, a breath of fresh air for this property, because we've got perk here, and undetermined perk, which is neutral. And you get these fails here, so you want to start pushing the system towards the road and these areas here. So this is the area you need to test. But the problem with that is there is a catch basin, and catch basins are a setback for on-site septic systems. And catch basins have different definitions. If you're a catch basin, a solid catch basin, and you don't, and it runs off all the piping in there, you can be, I think, 25 feet away, 10 feet away. But if you're a catch basin, would you have leaching ability, it leaches directly into groundwater, you have to be 50 feet away. So this catch basin here could be a real problem for the problem, because if it's 50 feet away, that means it goes into this area here, and then it kind of wipes out this area with two successful perks. So, I mean, that's the hard facts.
So you don't know right now whether that is a leaching kind of a catch basin or whether it's a solid?
Correct. I do know that groundwater is extremely high in that area.
Yeah.
But, Mr. Chairman,
Well, one second. Just a question for our,
Yeah.
maybe there are other ones from the board, but for right now, wait. When you say failed because the water filled with water?
Oh, no, Phil,
the-
I'm sorry, yeah, the fill was the timing aspect of the perk test. A percolation test is a 18-inch hole, 12 inches wide, you fill it with water, you have a measuring stick in it, you bring it up to 12-inch mark, and you pre-soak it for 15 minutes, and then you let it drop from 12 to 9, you time it, and then 9 to 6, you time that, you divide it by 3, and it's a minute per inch. So from 9 to 6, if the percolation rate exceeds 60 minutes per inch, it's considered not suitable for new construction.
So greater than 60 minutes an inch.
Correct.
So when you say 71, that's failed.
Correct. And the other Fs are, we didn't even bother timing it. Or probably my notes, I probably have the time we had. It could have been an hour, it could have been 80 minutes, could have been no movement, 60 minutes later, no movement. So we just found that the soils were very
right.
tight
Okay.
and just weren't perking. The intrusion of groundwater, which was found in a couple of them, because John is right. If they were very careful and lining up where the perk shelf could be, and line it up, because you have to dig into it, and water is intruded, you might have been successful. But that particular one, I think it's perk P, was abandoned due to wet conditions. During pouring it and witnessing the water soaking in, we found out the water table maybe rose in that perk hole, or before we even poured it, could have been water in it. Very much like what 6 Noon Hill was. That's why they went for the sieve analysis. The sieve analysis are allowed for repairs, but not for new construction. Same kind of condition, environmental conditions, were pretty identical. The groundwater went into the perk hole, and that's why we abandoned it.
All right. Okay. Now, I'm sure Mr. Glossa has some follow-up questions for you, and so will the board. Let me give John the first crack, and then the board's going to have a chance to ask everybody questions. So, John, do you have some responses to what you just heard?
well, the first thing was the thing about whether it's a leaching catch basin. So whether water is leaching out of it
Or leaching in? Yeah.
or leaching in. So if you have a water table with wetlands and a water table that's obviously very high, you're not going to have a leaching catch basin where water's leaching out. And so these catch basins all tie together and discharge into the wetlands. So they're not leaching in or out. They can't leach out because there's nowhere to leach to. And as we already said, the top layer of the soil here is a compacted sandy loam, so there's no leaching ability in the soils. So the second thing has to do with the perk tests, and as Wade said, if you look at perk test P, yes, it failed, and it's close to the system, but it didn't fail because the water didn't drop fast enough in it dry sample of soil, which is what a perk test did. It failed because we noticed after we filled it up that the water was actually rising rather than dropping. So a number of these, and some of them we didn't even start because once the laborer dug the hole and we went to pour the water in, we noticed that they were already saturated with water. Some of them, it's sort of a little bit of a balancing act to get above the water and below the C1 layer. So our point is, if you look at this system, right, and if you knew nothing else, you would say perk test O and perk test Q, they're in the location of the system, and they both are less than 60 minutes an inch, which is what Title V requires. Now, I understand, and obviously I can't disagree, that there were a number of perk tests that did not meet 60 minutes an inch. But none of these perk tests were allowed to run their course and go from 12 to 6. We pulled this measure and sticks out prior to that happening. Or maybe there was one or two, the ones that came out just a little bit more than 60 minutes an inch that we let you run. But most of them, we abandoned them before we even got to that point. Now, my sort of opinion or feeling is what was happening at the time is we were sort of coming to the conclusion, oh, that one's too high, that one's too low. It's kind of like the three little bears. Let's find the one that's just right. So that's what's going on. Like I said, there's some other remedies that, or some other things that you guys could do that could make it more palatable. Maybe not, I don't know. But we're just here to see, you know, if there's some sort of if we can have some sort of meeting in the minds of how we can do this. As I said, and it's just nature, unfortunately, in this spot. Highly unlikely we're going to be able to get out there again, you know, this year, and we don't really know. We were just sort of fortunate for this piece of property that last year we had a bit of a drought at the end of the summer and into the fall, so that's
All right,
where
John,
we're
here.
at.
Members of the board, let's start with our youngest member, newest member, certainly.
Hello. So, did you say there were already two engineering companies? You're the third engineering company that has tried to develop this property? Did I hear that wrong?
Yeah, I'm the one that said that, yeah.
Said,
That
so,
was the history I had with the land.
Oh, okay.
so what I know is Landmark Engineering, Paul Cutler went out there with Mr. Domi a long time ago and actually was able to get the C1 layer to perk for the first 3 inches at 30 minutes an inch. But at the time, right, Title V put the cutoff at 30, not 60. So Mr. Domi's letter to either Paul Cutler or to the applicant at the time was, well, wait until Title V changes because it's going to change till 60 and come back and you'll be all set. But for some reason, I couldn't tell you, Mr. Martin could tell you, they decided not to go forward with Landmark and they hired Bay Colony out of Foxborough to do it. But they were dissatisfied as Wade said, with sort of Bay Colony's lack of response, with, you know, getting the applications in timely and trying to work with Wade and Betsy to set up a time when we knew the water table would be low. So the first thing I did was just go out there with a backhoe on my own, and we dug, I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5 holes down so that we would have monitoring wells that were sort of done recently, because a lot of them out there are been kind of messed up over the years, so that I could inform Betsy and Wade as to when I thought it was a good time to do the soil testing. So I don't think that the fact that there was 3 different engineering companies really has much to do with anything that's happened.
So all the failed marks on there were just from,
Me.
That's correct. And I guess I'm mistaken. I've been out there with 4 engineering companies. There's also Frank Gallagher was out there too. So,
I mean,
And all of those,
But-
all
but-
of those tests are
but the-
shown on here. They're not necessarily identified as failed, 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 but we didn't try to hide anything.
No, yeah.
Wade has the information, so he knows which one's passed and which one's failed.
but the definition of failed is a time failed. And if if groundwater came in or it was, we'd call it an abandoned perk, because you couldn't complete a perk. So I would call it abandoned, so you can go out there and try it again at a lower timetable, a lower season of groundwater. But if a failed system, I write down, that means that times failed. The soil was not compatible. So just-
But again, we have 2 perk tests that passed that are below this system, and we don't have any failed perk tests that are within this system. So our opinion is that we meet all of the requirements of Title V and of the Norfolk Board of Health regulations. Wade's saying, well, you haven't proved it to us because there's so many failures around here, but we're saying the failures are not the result of the soil not being able to perk. Loamy sands on their own generally are going to perk between 2 and 10 minutes an inch. That's just the way it is, and these are not compacted soils. The sandy loam above is a compacted soil. It's firm, it's hard to dig it in it, but when you get down into the loamy sand, all of the perk tests were done with a shovel, not with a shovel and a bar and, a lot of effort. They're dug very easily. The soil is very sandy. It's just unfortunately a matter of trying to find that place high enough above the water table and low enough above the C1 layer where you get a successful perk. I mean, I think if you could go out, if the water table dropped down to 20 feet and this dried out for 3 or 4 weeks, the perk tests that we got that were 30 and 40 minutes an inch would be 10 minutes an inch. And I do soil tests all the time, and we do the test where we take it, we put it in our hand. If we can't make a ball out of it, if it just falls apart in our hand and it's loose in nature, it's loamy sand, you're going to get 2, 3, 4, up maybe 10. We'd be surprised if we didn't get something less than 10, but
Okay, John,
Just the way
we
it
have to
is.
sort of keep this at a reasonable time level.
Yeah, okay.
So you answered one question.
and
Do you
the
have any
other
more?
question just had to do with the sieve test, so you're telling us no, a sieve system that's not acceptable for new construction.
Correct.
So
is
that,
correct.
take that off the table
no.
as an option? No.
No, because here's why. We have 2 successful perk tests in the location of the system. So what we're saying is, rather than have us wait for, whenever that water table is going to drop again, wouldn't it be reasonable, since our opinion is we meet Title V with this system without doing anything, wouldn't it be reasonable just to confirm the results with some sieve analysis? That's all. We're not going to come back here and say, oh, it's loamy sand, now we want to go with 10 minutes an inch. We're just going to say it's loamy sand. You can, read about the soils, but loamy sands are generally soils with rapid permeability, 10 minutes an inch.
Jeff, question?
Question, no. I mean, Wade's our eyes and ears out there.
Yeah.
Wade has obviously more experience on this one site than probably needs to be with 4 different engineering companies. With the amount of failed tests you can see out there, with the close proximity of the only 2 passing tests with comparison to the actual size of that footprint, I gotta agree with Wade on that. We're not tasked as a board to find ways around our own regulations. In this type of meeting, we have these regulations in place. This is new construction. We usually don't issue variances for new construction. I've never seen that happen. I gotta agree with Wade on this.
Well, I do have a question. Is that your comment?
Yeah, that's
then?
it.
All right. So when you're talking about a system that's going to be put onto a site where groundwater apparently is fairly close to the surface.
Yes.
Who cares how percolable the soils are 2 or 3 or 4 feet below there when there's water in between?
Going to be more like 7 or 8 feet below. I don't know, who cares? I mean, you're right. To build this system, and I think it's right on here, you can see it, they're going to dig down to an elevation of 89, 96. So the ground out here is at about 98 or so. So they're going to dig down 8 feet.
To
They're
find
gonna
the
fill-
permeable soil.
They're going to get down into the loamy sand, and they're going to fill that with sand.
Uh-huh.
And then they're going to go 4 feet above the water table, which was maybe 18 inches or so below the ground, and go 4 more feet. So, I don't know, there's probably, well, the sand is going to go from 1015 down to 89, let's call it 90. So there's going to be 11 and a half feet of sand under the bottom of the system,
Okay.
of septic sand.
So all that sort of suspicious soil gets lifted out. You put sand materials back in and then fill another 4 feet on top, or whatever it takes
Yeah.
to get to 4 feet.
Right.
And so you got this mound.
It's a mound. It's a mound. It'll have a wall on one side and maybe partially on another side, depending on.
I see.
So you're right. That's what we're going to do, and it's over the loamy sands, and it's a huge horizontal area, which is why I tried to bring up, and I know you don't like to give variances to your regulations, but under Title V, if we design this for a 3-bedroom house with no garbage disposal, it would probably just be these 2 trenches. I'd have to sit down and figure it out, and they'd be right over the 2 tests that passed. So it's your regulation that's sort of pushing this thing out towards the street, not Title V. So I'm just throwing that stuff out. Like I said, my goal here would be, and you don't have to really decide on this tonight. If you want to take this under advisement and let us know by your next meeting or something, that's fine. But my hope is that we could have a meeting of the minds and just kind of get something that's palatable to everybody, and then, move forward with the plan. Like I said, Mr. Chairman, if you want to take under advisement and talk about amongst yourselves about it at some point, that's fine with us. But if you want to decide tonight, right now, that's fine with us.
Let me ask one question of Wade.
Sure.
Maybe you'll have another response as well. The argument we're hearing is, well, somehow, hook or by crook, 2 passable percolation rates were measured. And the other ones failed for a variety of reasons, perhaps not having to do with the porosity of the soil, but other factors. What's your argument against that?
Okay, I disagree with that. Failed perks failed due to timing in the soils that they were in. Any type of abandonment of a perk would have been affected by the groundwater. The soils, loamy sand, I'm not sure. That's really, it could have been a mix of a sandy loam and a loamy sand. You're looking at sand, clay, and silt at different capacities, percentages, and stuff, and that will create a perk rate, allow the soils to be accepted into the ground or not. These fails where you poured water in this hole against a ruler, and you got a 1 inch, and you start at 1 o'clock, and you walk away and come back at 2 o'clock, and it's still within that inch. It hasn't moved. It's there, it's set. And when you poured the water into the perk hole, it was a dry perk hole. There's no water coming in. And the ground's dry because we're jumping into it. Actually, some of them were going with ladders and stuff because we're going down pretty deep. It wasn't wet. Moisture wasn't coming in. Some of them they did. One of them actually did, the one that we're talking about. But don't get the impression that because one was through intrusion, was abandoned, that all of them are the same deal. These are failed systems, and there's some of them on the neighboring lot. We did get a successful perk at 41 minutes per inch, but it's all surrounded with failed systems. It's showing that the soil's inconsistent with the perk rates. And what I'm looking for is a consistent perk rate. And the only reason I'm doing it is not just to make John life miserable, and Mr. Martin's life miserable, it's the owner who's gonna be living in a house dependent on the on-site septic system. And then that system fails for some reason due to soil inconsistency, there is no other option on any of this area, of any slight chance of them coming up with a repair. And that's the biggest concern. You have your primary and your reserve at the same location. All the eggs are in one basket. What I'm asking for is a consistent soils to show it. And now that these two private wells are no longer a threat, and no longer a setback, that's the area of testing. That's where you want to focus on. You don't want to start, you want to just make sure. It's a tough lot. It's very inconsistent. You just look at my chart. You see 67, 41, failed. You got a 39. You got a 37, a 26. Coming this way, it seems to be a little bit looser, which is great. But then again, you're
Mr. Chairman, we spent a lot of time on this thing. The applicant, not even the applicant, the engineer is asking for a suggestion going forward. I think our agent has given one. We've given additional area possibly to pass, to test, potentially pass. And then I think we have to satisfy our agent. And if the applicant, or again, the engineer wants to apply for a variance, they're welcome to. But at this point, we have Wade out there working as our agent just for this reason. And then the recourse is to file for a variance.
So just to be clear, though, these weren't the only two perk tests that passed on the 3 lots. There's 2 others that passed that are over here.
But within the footprint of that system.
Within the footprint of the system, we have two perk tests that passed Title V.
With close proximity, though, I mean, you've got, with the amount of variable soils you have over there, I can completely see Wade's point where you want another test pit in that footprint of the system to make sure it's consistent over that whole footprint.
Sure, Jeff. I mean, the reason why I asked originally what failed meant, and now you've kind of come back to it, is that it sounds as if failures happen for several different reasons out there. One could be the soils themselves are simply not adequate. The other one could be you got problems with water coming in the wrong direction, actually filling up your hole from the bottom up.
Right.
So that's why, are there logs that actually explain what the manner of the test was? So that when Wade talks about you dig a hole, the hole's dry, you pour water in and it sits there, that's not a good test. That tells me you got soils that aren't percolating. Otherwise, why would there be a dry hole there to start with? It wasn't because there was water pressure pushing that test water up.
Right.
So if that's why it'd be useful for, I think, the board anyway, to have a complete view of what these tests represent. And I haven't
So-
seen that yet.
No, well, I can try to put something together for you, but it's after the fact, so I'm not so sure if it would be good evidence. But,
And so why
So my
you can't do
point-
more tests is because?
yeah, we can do that. We can dig down with a machine and give you a sieve analysis if you want to see it, from Filch bought GZA. Filch is like a certified lab. This is pretty much all they do is testing of materials.
Mhm.
But, I'm not like a really smart guy. I didn't go to Harvard or anything. I didn't go to like some fancy engineering school. I went to engineering school and I was successful to become a professional engineer. And I look at everything in a very sort of common sense way, right? So if you dig a hole and you're in loamy sand, I think anybody who digs a lot of holes and does a lot of perk tests will tell you the same thing. If you're in loamy sand and you pour in 12 inches of water and that doesn't drop 1 inch every 10 minutes, there's something is wrong, right? Either the guy, I don't know what he did, he put cement in the hole or he did something. Something's wrong because uncompacted loamy sand does not act the way it was acting out here. So my conclusion when we were looking at the rulers and it wasn't dropping was, at least part of that perk hole must be in the water. Because there's no other really explanation. Now, a lot of them I dug myself, And because we knew there was water, and we had ones that we saw water even before we started, we were trying to keep them up a little higher. And I know some of them I wasn't really happy, but it was kind of like, well, let's just do them and see what happens. Some of those were in the C1 layer. They were up higher. But, you know, they were kind of like, maybe if we got enough into the loamy sand, we'll get a perk. So it's just the way it is, unfortunately. But I really think that, again, and I know I've already said this twice and many 3 times.
Well, I'll tell you what, John, please, don't repeat yourself, because we have a lot of business to transact tonight. Let's just say this, right now, the board, I think I've heard the board say, we're not convinced. There's just no explanation here that is satisfying to us, that would suggest a favorable response to using other ways of assessing the suitability of these soils.
Okay. And some of these other remedies that we provided are not necessarily palatable to the board, like don't design for a garbage disposal. In other words, we could keep the system the same size and just say, well, it's no garbage disposal. So in that case, we're kind of making it bigger because we want to get something approved. So that none of them are palatable to the board.
Do construction, meet the regs.
Okay?
You satisfied with that, Fran? I mean, the policy of the board for years has been, we understand there's a lot of flexibility required for upgrades and for failed systems. But for new construction, the regs are the regs.
Your regs.
Yes.
I'm saying Title V doesn't require.
Well, I understand that.
Okay.
But we're here to enforce Title V and our regs.
I understand that, but I'm saying that in this case, unlike other cases, in this case, your regs are actually making the design look a lot worse than it really is. Because if, you know, if the system was just completely over the 2 that passed, and I don't want to
Well,
put words in your mouth, but
But
you,
our regs are there for public protection, health protection. So to say that we can just bypass them and they're not really relevant to this matter is incorrect.
okay. Okay.
All right?
Yep, thank you.
So,
Okay, no, thanks for your time.
all right, thank you. All right, our 7:30 appointment, and I apologize for the lateness, is the Norfolk Medical Reserve Corps. And representatives of that august group are here.
So we invited a few folks who have been, worked with the Medical Reserve Corps in the past to join us tonight and give us their opinion about the possibility of getting this whole process started again. So is there anyone that would like to come and give us a little history of the Medical Reserve Corps in Norfolk and the reason why we might want to get it going again? And then we have our public health nurse, correct? Correct. That works with another town. And maybe she could tell us a little bit about how this might be helpful for us in Norfolk. And then we have our emergency preparedness manager of the town that can give his opinion about whether this is something that would be helpful for Norfolk. So, is there anyone that? I
Yes,
think
please,
so.
please do, so
Thank you.
folks at home can tune in.
My name is Eileen Siegel, and I'm a veterinarian, and I've lived in Norfolk for the past, how long have we lived here? 20 years? 20 years. And I became involved with the Medical Reserve Corps as a member originally. Medical Reserve Corps is actually an organization that's under the auspices of, used to be the Department of Homeland Security. It has a lot to do with things like sheltering and vaccination programs in cases of emergencies in the local community. So typically it's made up of nurses, doctors, psychologists, and again had mostly to do with sheltering in cases of emergency as well as dispensing vaccination programs like flu shots and things like that. It's kind of how it started. But in light of what happened after Hurricane Katrina, the Medical Reserve Corps became a lot more involved with emergency and disaster planning within a community. So what we had done is we have leadership from the Medical Reserve Corps from above. The Massachusetts is divided into different regions, all looked after by different regional directors, and kind of trickles down to the local communities. So again, we started this a long time ago. Betsy was very instrumental in getting this underway. And basically we tried to put together a committee that included members of the Board of Health, the police department, the fire department, the Council on Aging, the Board of Education. So getting everybody, kind of a seat at the table to assist our town to respond in cases of emergency, which could be anything from a train derailment to a hurricane to just a fire, that several homes burned down. So again, we met with Ed and walked around the DPW with Butch until he retired. Now it's Bob. So this goes back a long time ago. And then it kind of fell apart, which was too bad. As far as I know, in the state of Massachusetts, we're required to have a local emergency planning committee, which involves a whole bunch of people, as far as I can tell. And I'm not sure that actually, exists at this point, other than perhaps maybe with Ed and maybe the DPW and maybe the police chief and the fire chief. But what we were trying to do is expand that a little bit to encompass more of the community and to get more people involved with emergency and disaster preparedness. And again, I come at it from the veterinary community, where the state of Massachusetts has enacted their own Pets Act. That was enacted after Katrina at the federal level, which is the pets in emergency situations. So we as a town are required to include pets in all of our emergency planning because people won't leave their homes without their pets. We saw that. And so that's part of where I come at it. And so we're required by law in the state of Massachusetts to have that within our community. As far as I can tell, we don't have that. So that's where I come at it. And when Fran became a member of the Board of Health, she contacted me through Betsy. And that's how we kind of got this started again.
So the reason why I was, I thought because of our website, our Board of Health website asked for volunteers for the Medical Reserve Corps, and I was ready to sign up as a volunteer. And Betsy said, oh, don't bother. We haven't been doing that for a while. And I think that you can't be prepared enough. And my understanding was there was somewhere between 50 and 80 people in the town that signed up for this the first time around. That's a lot of people that were willing to come forward. And I think that it doesn't look good when you ask people to join and then they don't do much. Now, I think they did something for about a year, but then for some reason it couldn't keep going. Speaking with Lisa Chappelle, Robin Chappelle in Walpole, Lisa is the head of the Medical Reserve Corps for our region, the regional director. She said that they're in Walpole, which is 1.5 times as big as Norfolk, I guess. But their Medical Reserve Corps is very active, and one of the ways that they keep it alive is through the flu clinic. They use that as a preparedness process when to give the flu vaccine, because we might have to give a vaccine to the whole town. We don't know what's going to happen in this world. And also just to get people used to signing in groups and telling them to go in different directions, etc. So they use their flu clinic as their annual process of keeping those folks.
Training exercise.
Training exercise, and they also offer courses, so people, so their volunteers can get CEUs, which we could offer to our folks, our volunteers, which is another way, because many professionals, nurses, doctors, and et cetera, other PT folks have to take CEUs or get CEUs throughout the year. So this is a way that they don't have to pay to go to different courses. Anyway, to me, it seems like a win-win for everyone. Ed, I had a conversation with Ed, and maybe he could speak to what we have in place right now in Norfolk and what he thinks about the whole process.
Question, we do have an LEPC, but the state MEMA has gone to regionalize it, okay? And we are, in fact, included with the town of Walpole. I got us certified, I think, back in January of this year. All right, so what's happening is that MEMA is keeping up with everything like this, but your regions for the Medical Reserve Corps don't line up with the MEMA regions. I don't know why. It's a state thing, okay? And what we decided to do with Jack Hathaway and everybody else said, okay, it's better if we can open a larger shelter and involve more towns. So the state has asked that everybody regionalize as best they can, and I believe that we are in this northeast, I know we're in the northeast region, and I think we're regionalized with 6 or 7 towns all around us. So in the time of emergency, it's better that we have places to shelter people. But what I found out was a couple years ago is schools are a hard place to use all the time, especially during snowstorms, because the superintendent wants you to leave the school as soon as you can because they want to have school. So regionalization has helped us. I would always use anybody's help that I can get. Sergeant Shannon here and I ran a shelter. How many years ago? It was a few years ago, and nobody comes. Now, we opened it up because people wanted it. You do it, and we ran it for several hours. People don't want to come. I can't tell you why. I try to keep up with everything I can. We have enough communication with other communities, so I'm not fearful that we can't service the needs of most of the catastrophes we've had for over the past 20 years.
Good to hear.
Well, you're saying if we were to have a power outage for, I don't know, 7 days, whatever, I don't know, would we would ask people to go to Walpole? We would ask them to go, how is that
All
going
right,
to?
before you can do this, it goes back to the table talk exercises. You have to give more information. What are the weather conditions? Power outage right now, people would stay in their house for 4 or 5 days. All we have to do is really supply them with water. We've done this with the town. We take one of the, we took the school up in King Street, the junior high,
Yeah.
and we set it up so you brought in, you could come in and recharge your phone, have a shower, and have pizza. We've done that a couple times.
So would not a Medical Reserve Corps group of volunteers be helpful in ensuring that you could provide these services? Even
But-
though you're not necessarily going to shelter in Norfolk, is what you're saying?
Right.
But
Okay.
there are other things that they, that this organization could do?
Yes. I welcome anybody's help, but as Betsy went on 2 years ago, Butch was here, it was big years ago, and it came to meetings like this, we started it, I'm not sure where it went.
Right, I'm wondering, what
We
happened?
just ran out of stuff to do. So I think that was, that was the problem, is that we just ran out of things to do. We visited the senior center, we visited the DPW building, we saw they kept all the cots, and so we did a lot of stuff, but then it kind of fell apart because.
Could you pick up the,
Sure. We just ran out of stuff to do. So again, I think, things like flu clinics would be helpful. I think things like CPR classes, just getting people involved. We spoke to the Boy Scouts. We did a lot of things, but we kind of people get bored when there's
Right.
nothing ever
I
happens.
agree with you.
Right.
Does the regional medical corps reserve region have monthly meetings? Like, for example, I go to MEMA down in Bridgewater. We're in Region 2 for Norfolk. I go to MEMA probably once every 6 weeks. I'm going tomorrow night. Now, we don't always train about emergencies. Tomorrow night is more stuff on grants. I go to a lot of grant stuff because I try to get as much money as I can. But I have constant communication. I get emails from them a couple times a week
From MEMA,
from MEMA.
yeah.
I don't know what the Reserve Corps does, but if, and again, as I said in the beginning, I know our regions don't line up. I could never figure that out. All right, so it would be better in my mind if the Medical Reserve region, whatever region it is, matched up with ours, and we could meet in the same bunker. I mean, even with Framingham, we switch bunkers. I mean, sometimes I go to Framingham. All right, so, I mean, the regions don't seem to line up, so the question is, we keep coming, if you will, by meeting regularly, but it sounds like you're saying that you don't meet regularly, and I would say that it's gonna come from the regional office. Okay, we should meet monthly or every
They
6
do.
weeks.
They actually do in Wayland.
Yeah, I do. Lisa, help me with Lisa's last. Moulton. Lisa Moulton, who is the regional coordinator, said they do meet monthly. And Robin Chappelle mentioned that she goes to the monthly meetings. And they also provide speakers that keep people interested. So they have various, at least Robin mentioned, she had various ways of keeping people interested in staying involved in the process. So I guess the question is, and maybe Leanne, it's Leanne, right?
Leandra,
Right, Leandra. Maybe you could,
do you want to come sit up here in the comfy chair? I mean, you're way in the back. And
I tend to hide anyway. Okay.
well,
Come forward, please.
Yeah, let me at least say hello.
come sit next to me.
We
Okay.
have a nice comfy seat here
Yeah.
abandoned by our
so
sanitarium.
Leandra is.
The complete
I'll say
opposite.
health
I'll say
nurse.
hi to you folks.
Yes.
I'm your public health nurse.
Complete opposite of hiding now.
I know. But I've been working for your town now for 17 months, and it has been a wonderful whirlwind ride. We've got a lot going on.
Like,
Well, we have now set up, you're having a flu clinic this year. You haven't had one in 2014, 2015, 2016. Yep, but we have a flu clinic set up. All parties on board are in agreement, and that will be wonderful, trying to catch everybody from our seniors to our teachers and kids and kind of the everybody grouping, so.
Do you have a time and a place we can advertise right now?
Yes, and yes, and yes, I do.
October 12th at
Thursday, October 12th, from 2:30 to 6:30. Senior Center.
Senior Center.
Yep, absolutely. And it's going to be open for all folks ages 4 and older.
Are you doing pre-registration?
That's a good question, and I think we still need to work out that particular detail.
Okay.
We're working in partnership with Rite Aid. I work with them in the 2 other towns that I cover. We did 5 successful flu clinics with them last year, and they just went so smoothly. So we're going to bring them in, and as we all know, Walgreens and Rite Aid are merging anyway, so it's all one
didn't know
big happy family these days.
so, will is this going to happen in Walpole? Are they having a flu clinic?
3.
They're having 3 flu.
I do 3 flu clinics in Walpole. Yep.
And is their Medical Reserve Corps helping you? Have
So
they-
the way that the MRC comes in is that we use our biggest flu clinic, which is at the high school, and that is one that has community registration, still open ages 4 and above. We hold it in the evening, 4 to 7 at Walpole High School, and we use it as an MRC drill. So the state changed its regulations on flu vaccine a few years ago. It used to be available, the state health department would ship out a ton of flu vaccine to everybody. You could immunize pretty much anybody known to mankind, at least as a public health nurse. And they changed that so that the only folks that we now will get vaccine for and that we can then deliver to the public free is for ages 19 and under. And it's actually not 19, it's 18 years, 364 days. As soon as you hit 19, you're done.
So that's why we haven't been able to run clinics
Correct.
the last
So I
2
still get
years.
flu clinic. I still get flu vaccine from the state, the quadrivalent, which is the good stuff, and I get that from the state that I can do children, and then the rest of it comes from Rite Aid. They direct bill. They kind of do everything. Because in Massachusetts, everybody's covered with insurance.
that's
Every
great.
single insurance policy known to mankind does it. So we utilize our MRC in kind of learning that pathway. So setting up a big event, doing the security, doing the kind of right down the line from
Right,
having
check-in,
a
registration,
logistics,
yep.
a check-in, flow patterns. And last year, we did, so this is just kind of what we use, and we actually go through. It's a good time for our volunteers to see how the incident command system works. That's what you use. And I mean, incident command is across the board. So to see how incident commands, that there is a command person, that each unit has a person that you can go to, that you should know your role, you should know what you're doing, and you should know where to ask questions. So we really utilize that. But I certainly I can pass that around, but I mean, we're using an actual flow chart for incident command during the MRC. We're utilizing volunteers from all capacities, from security and our CERT team to our logistics folks to our volunteers. And I mean, I have to tell you, our volunteers that check folks in, 80 and going strong, let me tell you, okay? But that's what they're there. They're, you know, not everybody has to be medical. And that's one of the really important things that we do.
The Medical Reserve Corps, there's training involved to be a member of the Medical Reserve Corps. So you have to take the Incident Command System classes. There are other things that you can be involved with where you need to be CORI checked and things like that, because we certainly don't want people who are in shelters
Everything
who
with the MRC application,
Yep.
and this is at the state level, there is a CORI
Yes,
requirement.
because you don't want people manning the shelters
Exactly.
who, you know, have things going on underneath that we don't want to know about. So the Medical Reserve Corps does, quantify and qualify and certify these people. So not just
I think one of the places where an MRC can really come into play is that we all know if, you know, the sinkhole from wherever opens up or whatever major disaster hits, a bioterrorism, a flu pandemic, whatever it is that hits, volunteers are going to come. They always come in a disaster. But knowing ahead of time who your volunteers are, what their strengths and capabilities are, that they've met each other at some point, it just makes things run so much more smoothly. So my background is I actually have done disaster relief all over the world. So I kind of come into this in a backdoor approach, that I've been in a ton of different countries during disasters and seen ground level how things work, and really knowing your teammates and what your team's strengths are makes a big difference. That you can say, oh, you know, I know you can go do this, and then I don't have to worry about that happening again. Like, I know it'll be taken care of. However, if I put you in charge of that, then I'm going to have to oversee and micromanage, you know, like that kind of thing. So it really makes a big difference, kind of in the end play.
So from your perspective, does it make sense that one of the focus points should be kind of a reactivation, perhaps, of our local MRC, using this clinic as a sort of springboard to bring together potential members? Or should the organization happen earlier than that, so that the clinic becomes the first major activity of a defined group already?
Absolutely.
yes, although I'm not necessarily sure that we would have enough time
I was just gonna say.
until October, but I think we could certainly pick up a few people.
How long does the training take? And do they offer training?
A lot of it is online. Most
Okay.
of it, and doing it on your own.
But
And
these
you
are,
take a test and you become certified.
right, these are folks that you do want to get together to talk and to have an introduction with each other, amongst each other, before you're putting them into the realm where they're working with the public.
Sure, sure.
So getting that, not a team formed, but at least the basis for a team formed with some basic information would be a really good thing to do before.
I don't know if Reserve Corps is allowed to do it, but MEMA puts out some tremendous amount of these incident command courses online. And I mean, I'm sure, call
There-
them up, I can give you guys name and number to
There-
do it, okay? I'm not
Hey,
sure-
Ed, hold on, there you go.
I'm not sure if it's the same one, but I'm sure that, you know,
They're,
do it.
there's a lot of crossover between them, and when you go through and you look, I was just looking to see here, right.
I guess I'm a little bit confused about, Ed, you're so familiar with MEMA. Does that, there isn't an overlap. Do they have a volunteer group, or is the Medical Reserve Group the community group that would service what you do with MEMA?
Most all MEMA is volunteer, not everybody. When you get into the city of Boston, they have paid positions, but most people out here are all volunteer. And if I wanted medical support during an emergency, I have a number to call. I tell them what I'd like, and they tell me how well they can provide it.
So are you saying they would send you 50 professionals, or, no?
Maybe 5.
Oh, okay, so then our MRC, though, would
Yes.
be your, now, the group of people that you could call.
So MEMA is made up, so I've done a lot of stuff with MEMA, thank you. I've done a lot of stuff with MEMA through the state of Massachusetts Animal Response Team, so SMART, so there's a state-level organization that takes care of animals in disaster response, as well as through the Medical Reserve Corps. So MEMA is made up of multiple emergency managers from every single 351 communities in Massachusetts, but also involves, again, people like myself, again, veterinarians working through the state of Massachusetts Animal Response Team, as well as the Medical Reserve Corps. There's also an organization called Massachusetts VOAD, VOAD, which is all these volunteer organizations, 311, stuff like that. There's so many organizations, and that's almost the problem, is that there's just so many
Which one do you
people.
choose?
And yeah, it's just, there's a lot of people in the mix, and they try to, so we've had meetings at MEMA and mock things, and every different group has like a desk and a telephone, and the emergency support function 17, and they call it in, and the animal people show up, right? I mean, there's so much.
Exactly as she's saying it, and that's all I do is I just orchestrate what I want. I talk to police department, fire department, DPW, and they say, we'd like this, okay. I mean, even to the fact that we have a federal light generator in this town. It's not ours. It says Norfolk Emergency Management, came from a federal grant. We house it if somebody calls up and says, I need your light tower. Okay, do you want me to deliver it, or are you gonna come pick it up? We sign it out, we know where it goes. If you need help, you let us know. Sometimes they say, will you take it over for us? Sure. I get a truck and I drive it over there, whatever they want. All right, it happens regularly, but you get a phone call, you get a text. Since I do work full-time, sometimes they'll say, all right, I can post out, all right, I need that at 5 o'clock. Okay, if not, they'll call me in my office and say, what would you like to do? So, it's just like she says, there's just all these resources out there, and all you have to do is go, I go to a book in both in my office here and in my house, and go, I want this number, some I keep in my phone. You just call them up and say, this is what I have for an emergency. I've talked to town administrator, the department heads, and this is what we'd like, please. And they say, okay, give us a few minutes and we'll get back.
Okay.
If someone's,
My only problem is that if Ed ever gets hit by a car, we're screwed.
that's the one emergency we're not equipped to
Yes.
handle.
Exactly.
So if someone wants to join the MRC, go through the training, get certified, be part of this group, what can they expect almost rubber hits the road if there's an emergency? If there's like an ice storm like we had and the power's out and suddenly they're needed? What happens? Who calls them? Is there literally a call in the night or?
So the people at the top, so the whole phone list, the whole phone tree, so you start calling people, so your team leaders, and then below that, and so everybody gets.
So team leaders would call the individual
Right, so if I need
members?
somebody that just needs to man a shelter, or if I need people to go out and, help the fire department, police department chop down trees, or we just want people handing out food to people, so all sorts of different.
But you're in the MRC as part of a group, you all get the same training, I assume?
Yes.
Okay.
Unless you want to specialize in different things, like I do a lot right now for my region, because I'm an accountant, I chase an awful lot of federal grant money.
Right.
Okay? They can get me a little small computer, and I go with all kinds of analytics for them, they like that. That's my specialty, that's what I do for a living.
Right.
Okay, so it's a good care of us. But it's just like, you get a text, I mean, I have, even on my phone, I get thunderstorm alerts all the time. And it says for this area, and then if a snowstorm is coming, or something, I'll get a call. Have you notified your DPW? I know Bob McGee and the people down there are really good. I know Chuck, you know, the
But,
whole
you know,
nine
that's
yards.
at
And
your,
that's what happens. And
that's at
so-
your level.
Right,
which
it's
is
at my
just-
level. So I don't know, what I'm saying is, does the MRC regional office do the same thing that MEMA does? MEMA gives me a heads up and says, we forecast, or we see in a forecast, this is gonna happen in your area. Have you reached out to, I'm gonna call all department heads in the town? Usually I call up Bob McGee, and he
Right.
says, yep, I'm aware of it, we're looking at this, how's your weather forecast look? We compare notes, and then I have a meeting if I think it's bad enough. I usually walk, I live on Midway Branch, I walk down to the DPW garage, Butch, I'm told, made tremendous coffee. I don't drink coffee, but that was a big thing when I started this, and Butch, and we'd call everybody, and everybody shows up. If, we'll say, Chuck Stone couldn't make it, we'll send his sergeant. Somebody shows up for a department head for each department, tell them what we're gonna do, and we've been very successful, even after these huge snowstorms, where we go back and get 70% reimbursement for all the costs and the big snowstorms we've had.
But
And I'm
again,
not sure how
that's
your-
MEMA.
Yes, your
But
regional.
I think the MRC is under the auspices of MEMA.
so
they're
like I
not an
said, I'm just more
independent
wondering-
Right, they're not an independent organization that goes out and does stuff on their own.
Right.
They're here to assist
So once,
communities in
once
the
we
case
get
of
volunteers
emergency.
and they get the training and they're sitting at home you know, in an emergency, just kind of waiting, I guess, for a call from someone above the chain. Is
Yes.
that what it is? If they're needed, they get called.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
I think,
So I would get notified that there's a shelter opening. So when there was what happened? Was it hurricane? So there was a shelter that opened up in Attleboro. So I was asked to respond out to Attleboro to assist with the
Oh,
sheltering
so you can
of
get
the
called into
animals
other towns
there.
as well?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
it was my understanding that our regional director would get calls from different towns. So Lisa Moulton would get calls from different towns saying, we have this emergency. And then she would activate the town people, and she might actually offer, suggest, or say, could you also go to Foxborough? So it was Lisa that has the list of all the volunteers. And unfortunately, she's not here tonight. But that was the way she explained it to me.
And that's true, because I actually get emails saying, we're looking for.
I do too.
You know, XYZ in the town of Framingham from this time to this time, or kind of, I've gotten many of them over
Okay.
my time.
And you could say, I can't do it, or,
Yeah, it's usually a please respond if you're available to.
Exactly.
Whatever it is that they're looking for.
So do we have a contact point right now if someone wants to sign up for this yet?
no, but I don't think we're at that point yet. My thoughts were that we would reactivate again by having a meeting and inviting the community once again. And I don't know how you do that, if it's through the
Probably
newspaper.
advertise in the Norfolk, I think it
right?
was easier when Norfolk had a little paper, but now we have a Norfolk Rentham paper, but I think we can probably advertise in that.
And maybe we could get Lisa to come and explain the whole process and see how many people wanted to sign up. But we do have an email list of all the folks
They did respond
that
originally.
originally responded to see if they're interested. When was that, 2009,
Yep, 2008.
2008? So who
We
knows?
used to have a table at Community Day, we did a thing at the fire department.
Right, there's lots of
We've held
things.
trainings here.
CPR. and-
First aid. We held tabletop exercises.
And lunch one day with everybody.
Yep, yep,
So-
we did.
So right now, the
Ran out
regional
of stuff to do.
head of the MRC knows there's no connection down to this level, then I assume, that there's just. no-
Right.
Yes.
And
So we'd have to restart that.
Right.
Who's going to spearhead
Connection.
it, I think, is
Right.
one of the big issues, because whoever is going to be your point person, it's a lot of work. And don't let anybody fool you, it is a lot of work.
And how,
So-
the first person that was, that ran the MRC,
Joanne Squitieri.
Yeah.
did she just volunteer
Oh,
based?
yeah, yeah, no,
I'm not
she
sure
was-
how it, I don't know how it all started, but yeah, Joanne
She,
Squitieri got
she
involved.
volunteered to spearhead it, and she was actually
She was
great.
awesome.
Yeah.
She's a little quiet, you never
Yeah, but
expect that.
she did great. She held meetings and
She still lives in town, I see her almost every night walking.
yeah, I'm not sure whether personal reasons or you know. But she did it for, you know, a few years or so.
Jim Gibfried?
Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
Does Jim still live in town?
No, I don't believe so.
So maybe we could at least put together an email and send them out to those folks that were initially part of this, and at the same time put something in the local newspaper saying that we were looking for volunteers and we would be having a meeting to explain the process.
But who's willing to spearhead that
That
part of
piece
it?
of it.
Yeah.
Collect the applications,
Okay,
plan
dust
the
off the
meeting.
That would be a
Yeah,
joint venture between Fran and myself.
We can do that.
Yeah.
there you go.
I did it
Thank
last
you.
time.
That's
The
and
first step, right there.
I'm not able to do it again.
Thank you, Betsy. Yeah, I hear you.
No, it was a lot of
And
work.
I'm so excited that you haven't lost your
No,
enthusiasm.
I mean, again, I do a lot of stuff for the SMART team, so I actually go and I do lectures on animal sheltering at different MRC communities. So Needham is very active, Newton is very active, Lowell. I drive to Lowell a lot and talk with them, so I do a lot of that.
Yeah. And Ed, just a question. So we have a town emergency emergency plan, and it was about this thick. I tried to read it, but I kind of gave up. But then Ed was telling me that he's got it down to about this level,
Yeah.
and is it ready for
Not
review?
quite, probably, well, it's not ready for review and won't be now till, the state took a good portion of the summer off, and they've had some change in positions at MEMA. It's gotta be approved by MEMA, okay? So,
Our town plan has to be approved by MEMA?
oh yeah, oh yes, oh yeah, yeah. It's gotta be approved by MEMA. They come out, I use their template. Everything has to be approved through MEMA.
Oh, they use their template. I thought it
Yeah.
was your
No.
design.
Originally, the one on the three-ring binder was, I've been doing this for over 25 years.
Yeah, that was
The
from
one
the
of the three-
90s.
Three-ring binder was, and I just kept updating that way, changing people's names
Okay.
and going that way. But then the state came up with this new template, they're trying to put it on, they're trying to get out of the dark ages, and now it's in a Word document. So that has to go to them, and then what I want to do, instead of mass producing these binders, which very few people read, okay, I was gonna,
Yeah, I remember that.
all right, so then what I'm gonna do is make a few, I'll go to like Staples, get a few made up, but then give it to everybody on a thumb drive or something like that. And that's what I'm waiting for
Yeah.
out of MEMA.
Well, I think it would be great for us to know what the plan is, because I think we're actually included in that plan a bit. So,
Can I ask a question of Sergeant Shannon? How does the police department then work with the MEMA group and the fire department and Ed and everybody else? What role do y'all play?
I guess that would be based on each incident, what our role would be.
Yeah. I mean, presumably if there's public safety involved, then you've got a role to play.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And our role would be security and working hand in hand with MEMA and Norfolk Emergency Management, Fire Department, DPW.
So in the plan that Ed's talking about, there's clearly defined roles for the government
Yes.
and the police department and the fire department.
It goes back to what's already been mentioned, which is incident command. All right, even though it may be an emergency, I'm gonna default to the full-time people. They know more than I know. They come up
Yep.
with they say, "Oh, this is what we have, what do you wanna do?" I mean, I mentioned earlier, when we just get down to the DPW, have a cup of coffee, okay? That's pre-planning. MEMA's big on pre-planning, and you wanna get into that, because if you wanna get money, if they call a state of emergency for the state, you have to have all your ducks in a row to do this. So I have to have it noted that, yes, we had this meeting, I spoke to these people who are aware of this, this was our plan. And even though it can be done, I usually put like an after-action report together, like a one-page thing. I met on this time, each department was present, put their names down, okay? And they'll call, like during major snowstorms, they call me, well, depending on how long the storm lasts, every 6-10 hours. Sometimes I'll either call them ahead of time and say, well, fine. I mean, it depends where the storm hits the hardest. Sometimes they don't call us.
I guess my only my only input would be maybe, and I'm not sure how legal this is or whether the current emergency planning people want to include, again, the people like the Board of Health or the Medical Reserve Corps, the Animal Control Officer, the Council on Aging, the people in the Education Department, to kind of be a little bit more inclusive. And again, if we're going to be maybe using the schools, or do we have to shelter animals, or do we need help manning shelters? So that would be, I think that would be helpful to just expand the Emergency Planning Committee to maybe include more of the community.
Would
Have
the, would the police department ever put a call directly out for volunteers in some type of emergency, like directly to the MRC, or does everything run through MEMA?
So it's run through MEMA.
Okay.
So, next steps.
So, are we in favor of trying to get this going
We
again?
have to see if we
Well-
can get the input.
Well, I think the answer still is yes, only because we're supposed to. I mean,
Well, we have to
this
see if
is-
there's any interest if we put out that
Yes,
call.
yes. And
Oh, right.
one thing I forgot to mention for just telephone calls with Lisa Moulton was, there's also funding available. So, for training, or whatever we need. I think you mentioned, Betsy, you
Yes,
have a laptop. I don't know, what else?
We're getting 5,000, or we can get up to $5,000. 3,500 of it is funding our Blackboard Connect emergency notification system.
What is that? Could you explain
like
that?
reverse number.
Our reverse 911 system.
Oh, that's what we have in place right
Yep.
now. So that's funding, 3,500 a year?
It's actually 6,500, so 3,500 of it comes from emergency preparedness grant money.
But through the MRC? Or through MEMA?
No, not through MEMA, through the state emergency preparedness.
Okay, so Lisa was mentioning specifically the MRC. There was
Oh,
money
maybe there's-
available
maybe
for
there's grant
stuff
money?
there.
I don't know.
Yeah. So these are some things that I'm not sure about and we can look into, but there's that opportunity as well, I think. So,
Dust off coordination with you three.
well,
So we can put
hopefully
something
we'll
around.
use Leandra. And,
looking away.
and, okay, so we'll be in touch and then we'll try and pull
So is
together.
the plan try to have an organizational gathering after you've advertised in as many media as possible for
Mhm.
volunteers?
I think
Gauge what the interest is to
Yeah.
make before we go to
Right.
the next step.
Right.
Make sure it's not premature, so.
People need to know that we're sort of reactivating this group. And we may be surprised, we were surprised the first time at how many people showed up.
That's right, you must have.
I've been around forever. So, yeah, but I also kind of saw it, sort of come and go.
So the informational meeting was, who gave the overview? Do you remember?
That was Lisa Jackson. She
That was the other
yeah.
coordinator.
Yep.
So this is a new coordinator.
Yeah, Lisa was awesome. She was a big personality.
Mm.
Loved her.
Mhm.
Yeah.
She's a permanent spot builder.
Okay.
She does her story.
Okay. All right, we'll
Was Lisa Jackson from the
keep you
state?
posted about how
Yeah,
it's
MRC.
going.
she was the our Region
you for
4A coordinator.
Activating this.
Okay.
You're right.
She's really the one that got us up and running.
That's nice. That's nice. Lisa Moulton, who's now at the 4A region level, is brand new in the job.
Mhm.
Right.
January, I think she said.
There's been a lot of cycling of people through that position.
Yes,
She's a firefighter too, I think. Is that
she is. She's a firefighter paramedic. So for just as the MRC, she's just kind of getting her feet wet to what her responsibilities are, and trying to kind of gather her kingdom and what's in her kingdom and like that kind of thing. So she's getting there.
I've forgotten the actual numbers, but how many folks are in our region? Is it about 26 or 28, somewhere around there? And most of the communities
How many
in Region
towns?
4, yes, how many
I think
towns?
it's 15.
Well, 4A and B are combined
Oh,
now.
yeah.
They're combined now,
I
28.
think the majority of the towns, Lisa mentioned, majority being only a half dozen do not have an active MRC.
Yeah.
So there
Something
must
to
be
fix that.
something
Yeah, it looks like 28,
there.
28,
okay.
because it's a
28.
4A, 4B
Oh, that's right,
combined
yeah.
now. And that was one of the things the state did when they changed it to Cambridge Health Alliance, overseeing all the.
Just an update at our next meeting, if you guys get any progress on it. Just get an update at our
Oh,
next meeting. just to
absolutely,
see if there's
sure.
any Progress, kind of, I don't know, kind
Sure.
of dust off
By the next meeting, we'll
Yeah.
have,
Do you know Robin Chappelle? Have you talked to her?
I did speak with Robin. I went,
Okay.
that's how I met Leandra.
Yeah, she's
She's
been
a wealth
an old
of
friend of the board
information.
from a long
Yeah.
time ago.
A long time ago.
So it'd be nice to maybe tap her ideas too.
Yep.
Well, that's what I'm here to present.
Oh.
That's what I work from here to
too.
here away from
Oh, I
Robin.
see.
So yes, Robin is my boss in
Robin knows.
Walpole. So she's who I'm working with, and a lot of our techniques and thoughts are being transmitted through.
Great to hear.
She's an amazing woman.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Well,
Thank
thank you.
you.
Thank you all
for your
for
time.
your
Nice
interest
seeing
and your
everyone again.
presence.
Robin.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Ed. Looking forward to that new plan.
I have not.
All right, I haven't done anything with it. Come out with me.
All right then. Let's see what the next step is. On our agenda,
Minutes.
minutes.
If that's it, no one else wants to hang around and hear about minutes?
So we have minutes of June 6th to review and approve. Is there a motion to do so?
Motion to approve the minutes of the June 6, 2017 Board of Health meeting as written.
I just have one question, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's
We
fine.
talked about a bill in front of the house about cigarettes.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
didn't not see it here. It's called House Bill,
112.
House Bill 2. Nope, that one is on here.
Oh,
That
it's
one
the
she
40B one.
talks about. 112 is on here. This was House Bill 2864, an act to protect youth from health risks of tobacco and nicotine addiction. Change the age to 21, which I think we have in this town. But the other thing was prevent the sale of tobacco in pharmacies. And we do sell cigarettes in Walgreens. Walgreens does sell cigarettes, and it is considered a pharmacy. So this bill would prevent that, but
What do we leave it at? I thought we left to someone who's gonna,
well, I was
Yeah,
going to,
I kind of remember
confirm
that
that.
someone being me, actually. Now that you remind me, Fran.
it must have been some type of
Um,
tobacco lobbyist made you keep this off the minutes.
Oh, yeah, no. These aren't my minutes. So somehow it's escaped both Betsy's mind and mine. Well, we were basically asked to essentially over our letterhead, send a prefab letter that was out there. My recommendation at the time was to reference it with some reference that we had already passed much of what was in the bill
right.
as a town initiative, and to add that as a kind of preliminary to the who presented the original? Was that an MA? Who wrote the one that,
It was from the Mass
NAPC?
Association of Health Boards. But this is right now in committee. The Department of Public Health Committee has it right now, the bill. So I'm thinking, I'm sorry,
Do
Mass?
we need to do anything with that right now then? Do we wait?
Well, we could send them a letter saying, please pass the bill so that pharmacies won't sell cigarettes, that we would like that bill passed, if you're in favor of that.
I have the Title V bill letter that you guys wanted to send last time.
Title 5?
Remember the Title V bill?
Well, it wasn't really, it
Well,
was about our regulations and that they
Oh,
would
this is-
be,
Okay, this is the first one here with the, yeah, we were talking about the tobacco one, remember
Oh,
that one?
yeah. I thought we had it.
Do you have the Mass Association of Health Board version of that thing that was submitted last time we looked at?
That one? Oh,
This is,
No, that one?
what are you talking- this is the, like,
This is Title
This is the
V.
Title V one. we're
Who had the
talking
one out about tobacco 21? Was that MHB?
I
think Fran
think
had
I
that.
might
Copy of it?
have it.
Um,
Yeah, went to DeLeo.
Right.
Are we supposed to sign this
So,
tonight? Did we-
Yeah.
did
this
did you
letter-
sign this?
what's that?
And,
Was this circulated?
That's the one that was circulated before you guys voted on at the last meeting. I slapped it on letterhead and,
Okay, so before the last meeting.
oh, hey, Tom, I have good news for you.
You do?
Yes, you've been appointed to the zoning working committee.
Nice. Congratulations.
You can thank me another
June
day.
21, huh?
I almost forgot to tell you.
Uh-huh.
Call that Christmas in July, I think.
Is
That's
that
what I
what they call
think.
that?
Hey, listen, you keep your mouth shut, you could be next.
So, Fran, what you wanted to do was add to this, the notion of the,
prohibit the use
So,
of,
e-cigarettes.
it would prohibit tobacco in healthcare institutions, like pharmacies. So, we would just be in, we could either use that letter,
yeah. Well, if it's in committee, we should get
And-
this letter out.
and I think we should send it to the chair of the committee, DPH, Department of Public Health Committee. There's Senator Jason Lewis and Representative Capers, and
Okay.
as opposed to just sending it to DeLeo, which is what they were asking to do, but that was back in, well, that was
June
actually
2nd.
June, and it went to committee in May.
All right, so Fran, your suggestion is to take this letter, remove that address, and put it with the chair of the committee. Have the
Yes, DPH.
Okay. And your recommendation is to send this one as is?
It looks
Over-
fine to me.
Yeah,
That's a separate one, that's obviously the.
Norfolk Board of Health, yeah. Is there any disagreement with that proposal?
What you just discussed with what's involved in that one?
Tobacco,
Yeah, no problem whatsoever.
okay.
Do we have to vote on anything
can-
like that?
Is there a motion to approve sending this to the committee?
I motion to approve.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
So,
I can
Do you
work
have
with
another letter
you.
for me to do?
yeah,
I can work with you, Betsy, on
That'd
it.
be awesome.
it's
All
just a
right,
matter
send
of,
it. I'll cut and
changing-
paste and,
changing the address.
and give you the address. I didn't give you the address last time, so you had to email
Oh,
me
yeah.
back. This time, I will give you the address.
Awesome, that would be great. It's so
All right.
helpful, thank you.
Yep. And I'll put the letter together.
all right, last time we did talk about the issues of DEP being overwhelmed, and then adding this on top of their pile didn't seem like a really good idea to us. Can I borrow your pen, Jeff? And
Thank you.
so with that addition to the minutes, which is to reference that we're going to send a letter to the appropriate committee concerning
House
Bill
Bill 2864.
2864.
An act to protect youth from health risks of tobacco and nicotine addiction.
Right. So where does that go? Did you pass it over?
Thank you.
What was the House bill called?
House Bill 68, what did I just say, 68, take that back, 2864,
2864.
right.
Okay, so, motion to amend the minutes of June 6, 2017 to include the reference to sending a letter in regards to Bill 2864?
House Bill,
House Bill 2864, and then to approve, subsequently to approve the mini minutes as written.
Second?
oh, I'm sorry, second motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so with that addition, are we ready to approve the minutes?
We just did.
Oh, is it?
You
I thought
did.
that was just the addition to the minutes.
No, we approved the minutes.
With the addition.
With the amendment, yeah.
Good.
Don't
Okay.
repeat that,
One
please.
fewer things to do. All right.
Did you write that down for me?
No, that minute, that what I just said?
Oh,
No.
well, did you, I didn't know if you changed anything in the minutes.
We did. We added the reference to
House
sending a
Bill.
letter in regards to House Bill 2864.
Okay.
That's pretty much just a blurb about that.
What you and
Okay.
Fran are going to work on.
Right, so
All
however
right,
you want to
Great,
add that in. We talked about that at that meeting, to do that.
okay.
Just some
All
type of
right.
reference
And
to it.
having now approved these minutes, let me ask, anything about 40B projects and the powers of the Board of Health?
I
Has
did
been any
not, I didn't
conversation?
ask.
All right. I think the idea is to talk with Jack about whether town council needs to be consulted, or should be consulted, in fact, on what is the power of the Board of Health when it comes to enforcing our own regulations? Because right now,
Well,
there was some indication that we had.
Because 40B is strictly Title V. Any local regulations
Gone.
are out
Right.
the window.
That's what we all thought, and then along
So
comes
we
this
read that
judge who said,
SJC.
maybe not. So there appears to be a maybe not in this,
Yeah.
that maybe we have additional power.
Based on that one letter that was
Based
given to us
upon the,
last meeting.
Do you want to
Stuff.
send me draft an email, Tom, and I'll forward it to Jack?
An email, well, sure.
Ask for
I need to get a copy, I think I still have it.
town council's opinion on that letter.
Yeah, I gotta get the letter.
That
It's
letter
at
from
home,
last week.
I'll go
Okay.
find it, I'll find it.
No, it's right here,
Off of each 112.
but if you want to go find it, or we can make a copy
It's
before you
faster
walk
if
out
you
the
do-
door.
I think
Faster if we do it
Well,
here.
I won't give it to you, but I will give you a copy before we
it
walk
was in that Wicked
away.
Local.
Out the front
Yeah, the
door.
one the guy, what's his name,
That's
brought
it.
to us.
Oh,
yeah.
good,
That's it.
okay.
All right,
Yes, because it was going to affect the well water, which was the only drinking source of this
Oh, Betsy.
particular individual.
my thought is, could you share this with Jack and see whether it suggests to him that he should check with our council to find out whether in fact we as a board have more power than we thought we did when it comes to 40B
Sure.
review?
Yep. Can you
Because
scan that to him?
that's certainly what that seems to say.
And what happened with the permit for wastewater?
I didn't talk to Wade about that either.
So we just
I-
carry that
Just throw it
forward?
Yes,
on
I
to an
did.
old
I'm
business?
sorry. Yes, I did, actually, the other day. That falls under our septic hauler regulations, so we do permit them. Those septic hauler, they do pump the wastewater holding tanks.
Well, this sounded different. This was for.
Any industrial wastewater,
industrial-
including from tight tanks with floor drains, same thing?
Right,
Okay.
yep.
All right, so
Yeah.
they're already permitted.
And they're already permitted by us.
That takes
We-
care of
Yeah,
that.
I think we're ahead of the curve on this one a little bit.
Yep.
I mean, this was a recommendation of Bill Domi some time ago, and we just did it.
Awesome. It looked like a new state regulation, so they probably looked at our regulations
Yeah.
and
I
said,
just keep
that's a
copying us.
great idea.
Way to get
Yeah,
another.
they did amend the state regulation
That's
back in
why I brought it
September,
up.
and,
Yeah.
but I waited that we're covered because it's actually
Awesome.
our licensed septic haulers are the ones that, do the,
Industrial
Tight
waste.
tanks.
yeah, the tight tanks.
Yep. Any other old business?
Any industrial waste,
You
technically that
shouldn't
would
give
be
me
like
things
waste
to
oil.
read.
Uh-oh. Wait a minute. What's this?
Any industrial waste would be any waste oil generated by people that receive oil, take it, like even like any place that sells oil takes oil back. Any place that uses oil, it
I think
generates
that's
waste
different.
oil.
Isn't it
I
different?
think so. Industrial waste, I think that falls under. You can bring that up with weight, but even like a garage that takes in oil, some people burn it as a heat source,
Yeah.
which they can get rid of some of
Yeah.
it, but some of it take it away as small source generators of it. You may just want to double check with weight on that one, that's all, just to see if it includes that. I thought it did, includes waste oil.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's a bit different than a tight tank in an industrial site. It just collects floor drainage kinds of issues.
Yeah, it's way different.
Any industrial waste is start getting into
Yeah,
waste oil
yeah.
products and greases and things like that.
Okay.
So
Meanwhile,
I
yes.
was tasked with reading mail that came in. And so these reports are monitoring the landfill. And I kept seeing on both reports, it talked about dioxane detected in groundwater at 2 sites, concentrations above DEP limits. So it mentioned, this happened, this has happened again. One was in December, one was in May. And I just wondered, who else looks at this besides us? Does it
That
go
goes to the state, doesn't it? That,
says prepared for the town of Norfolk Department of Public Works.
yes, the DPW.
So how can we look at it here? Why do we look at it too, unless we're
They're
gonna?
required to give us a copy. I think it's a report that goes to the state, doesn't
Okay.
it?
So then, if we wanted to, dioxin is a carcinogen, and it has the potential of leaching into the groundwater and wells that are in the area. I don't know how many wells there are there, but, near the landfill. So I just bring this to your attention, and I don't know if we should just ask Bob McGee about it. Do they just let it sit there?
I think Bob McGee would be the first person to
Okay.
ask to see what department it goes to in the state, and obviously that's for monitoring wells at the landfill.
Well, monitoring sites, not
But obviously they
wells.
always also do testing of the soil, of the water from the drinking water wells.
Well, they're farther away
Right,
from the
but they do
land.
test the drinking water.
Yes,
So right now,
absolutely, but this is just for the
Right.
landfills.
So, I mean, I think
Land-
Bob would be the one to ask, if it's just sort of monitoring any sort of transition or levels or whatever, but I think Bob would be the one to talk to.
So do we have back copies? I'm wondering how far back it goes, that they've noticed that
Beginning
one
of
thing.
time.
Since the beginning of time. Maybe I'll drop in someday and see how
Heads
far
up because
back
it's in
been.
storage.
It's been happening. I'll talk with
I
Bob.
bet Bob would be able to answer pretty quickly what's going on, as he's what you do
Mm.
and what's supposed to happen with it, so.
Yeah. It says actually you don't have to report it to the state, believe it or not. So I'm not
Because
sure.
this one- Because of the
It-
size of the numbers, or
I
what?
think it's the fact that it's under a landfill.
So I'm
It says
assuming
it
they
was
do these reports
One
on-
for dioxane was detected in the groundwater at MW3 and G3S at concentrations above Mass DEP RC of 0.3 micrograms per liter. This is consistent with previous sampling and does not require notification to Mass DEP. So this was put together by some.
What is
but
R-
it-
Doesn't RC mean reportable concentration?
Well, if you probably know better than I do, I'm sure you do. Let's see, here it is. Here's the chart. This is right up the alley. And dioxane is here.
Yeah. Mass, RCGW.
It's 0.3, and ours was 3 and 6.74. And then this one is where am I? Dioxane 0.532, and this was a duplicate test, 0.342.
Well, these far exceed the MCP levels.
Well, instead of guessing at data, let's just bring it to Bob.
Okay.
But it'd be
Well,
interesting to
yeah.
know what he would say, so please, at the next meeting, let us know, would you?
Well, yeah, I don't understand how they can have values above .3, which is the Massachusetts Contingency Plan, or MCP, value reportable concentration.
And yet it's
But
We
when
have
you're
to say
dealing
we're
with
not
the
reporting
land,
them.
it might
Right,
be
but this is
different-
what the person that put this together, which is a particular company, right, says.
It might be a
I
different,
don't understand.
different protocol when you're dealing with landfills. We don't know. I mean, that's what I'm saying, just see what Bob says. You know,
Okay.
obviously,
Yeah, unless these are
portable
for
concentrations
drinking water
could be
supplies.
Under the drinking water part as opposed to
Yeah, yeah.
landfills.
Would you like to talk to him about it?
I can talk about it.
Would you? I'd feel better about
That'd be
that.
interesting to know, and interesting to hear that. you
I'll
know,
take
so.
care of the
Can I grab those,
MRC,
or-
and you can have these books.
Okay, I'll take those, yeah, that's fine. It's within my
Summary of
wheelhouse.
groundwater results.
And here's the fact sheet
I'm thinking what you might get is the fact that these are groundwater results, and those may be drinking water regs.
And you
uh,
can, if you'd like to
Portable
know.
mountain drinking water is different than just.
Yeah,
having
yeah,
mountain
yeah.
water for
See.
landfill.
Thank you.
But interesting to find out. Thank you, Fran, that would be.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Anything else you discovered?
I'm good.
Okay. Any other old business? Any new business?
That was kind of new business, I think.
Oh. True. Is there any reason why we shouldn't adjourn?
Well, next meeting date, do we want to try to set that now, or is that?
Yeah, we should.
I'd like to do that.
Would it make sense to hold a meeting after there's been an attempt to try to do this organizational meeting of the regenerated MRC?
I'm not sure if that's going to happen in August, because I think it's going to be planning in August, and people are on vacation, so
Probably
I'm
a
thinking
September
we
meeting.
probably will do the MRC in that informational meeting in September, and you can't combine meetings, is that correct?
For what? For,
That you would be a part of the informational, the Board of Health would be a part of the informational meeting.
no, I mean, if we get together, we have to post as a quorum. But I think if you're just gonna get together with those people to kind of inform us, you could do that outside the purview of a.
Well, I'm
board.
hoping there's going to be another 100 people come forward at maybe the library.
Well,
So where
first
did you
so
do
okay, I'm
that?
sorry, so
At the
fir- but-
library.
But first, you're gonna meet just to try to figure this out.
Well, that was just with
Right,
Eileen.
and have Betsy and work this
And
out
I will
somehow.
ask
So
Leandra.
we could probably have a meeting after that works.
Is that one-
I
okay.
think so, right? Before the meeting's held, is that what you're thinking?
Well, I was hoping we would just send out an email. You want to see the email before we send it out? Or it's just going to say
No,
we're
not
trying to get
necessarily.
this started
Well,
again,
This is
join
a
us.
reorganization of the MRCs.
Right.
So that this doesn't require necessarily our blessing.
Okay.
But if members of the board want to show up to sort of show
Yeah,
our solidarity
yeah.
and
But
interest.
that won't be
into a
until
meeting.
September, so I don't think it should have anything to do with,
All right, what's on our agenda?
I actually don't have anything on your agenda coming up.
September it
We're not
is?
going to get anything from John Glossa on Pennacook?
At this point, that has to be a variance.
That's
hearing.
been going on for
course.
10
If
years.
he wants to put a
I think
variance
it's longer than
together-
that. Pennacook was
I think
developed, I don't know, I was still in the Conservation Commission in those days. And
He's
I
been-
walked the site, I got my feet wet, and I'm thinking, who the heck is going to build here? And nobody has, all these years.
Isolated wetland that big, sounds like a vernal pool.
Oh, God.
That case is a 100-foot buffer. If it
All
is, it's
right.
an isolated wetland, it was as
All
big
right,
as he's showing.
so if there are no
I
other
think you
reasons
should
for us,
just deem it unbuildable and stop paying the taxes on it.
so we are going to meet again, we're not quite sure when, sometime, I don't know,
September?
August,
Unless
September?
something happens beforehand?
You want to a tentative September date, just in case? and-
Yeah, unless something
Set a
happens
tentative,
beforehand. we can-
I think it should be early September.
Yeah, how about after Labor Day, but not too late after?
And do you have, is this always a Wednesday, or it can be any day of the week?
It's typically a Tuesday.
A Tuesday?
traditionally met on Tuesdays.
So Tuesday,
You have a
The
conflict with
12th?
Tuesdays?
no,
Okay.
well, no.
Well, probably not the day after Labor Day.
So the 12th would be the next Tuesday.
The next Tuesday be the 12th? How's the
Shoot
12th
for
of
that
September
one.
look?
That I think is gonna work for me.
Let's go for the 12th. Betsy, do you have the ability to request that when you send us an email that can be put on our calendars? Do you know how that works?
Through Google Mail?
Google Calendars, I
Yeah.
think, yeah.
I do.
Because it'd be great to actually just automatically have that pop up. Because it sort of
Don't know how
didn't
to
pop
do it,
up
but I can
this.
figure it out, I'm sure.
Do you need permission from us to,
I might.
but you
Well, if
can
you-
work that through.
Yeah,
But I
you just
can-
do
but I
the
can
request
that
for the
through
permission.
Gmail, right? I'll do it from my other.
Because I kind of forgot about tonight.
What's that?
When I got your email last week, I said, wait a minute, I'm supposed to be in Barrington, Rhode Island tonight. But it's not that far, I drove back.
Oh.
But I'm gonna drive back now.
Really?
I'm supposed to be on a boat.
Oh,
So,
It's giving
I
us more
was on a
stuff to
boat,
do.
and I got off the boat, I got here.
Oh my God, that's some
So
dedication.
that's
right
no
there.
problem.
I would have said,
Well, and as soon as I saw a variance hearing, I figured I'd better show up.
it was good to hear that from Wade. I didn't understand percolation testing, so it's good to.
I
I said
I'm still
to,
unclear under why those holes failed. It sounds like there's a lot of weird stuff going on. Yeah,
Motion to adjourn?
all in favor?
I second the motion.
Aye.